Let's talk about autoflowers today on the channel. We all love autoflowers, right? There's a lot of different types. There's a lot of different breeders available. We've got 420 Fast Buds. We've got Brothers Grimm. We've got Mephisto, Night Owl. You know, there's so many different companies out there. There's a lot of younger up and coming companies that are making good work out there. I myself, I'm a photoperiod breeder, and I don't breed autoflowers at the moment because I've been working doing something that I wish a lot of breeders would do, and that's stabilizing my lines. Now, while I'm doing all of that, there are periods of time where I really need to cultivate just some stuff to get me by, and I don't need the hassle of an extra veg time or whatever, or a lot of my rooms are taken up and I just have a little space in the corner or something. And on those occasions, sometimes I choose to grow autoflowers. Now, also, there's been other times where I've grown autoflowers within my 2x4 tent, within a 1x1 tent. I've even grown them in a big old room that's like 12x12. And I've had varying results growing them in greenhouses, in the yard, all kinds of different things. And I can tell you they are versatile. But I can tell you another thing, and it kind of looks like this. If you don't know that motion, you haven't been to Vegas. So basically what I'm saying is that it can be a little bit like pulling that lever on a slot machine. It's a gamble sometimes to grow autoflowers. Now, everybody that is out there that loves autoflowers and you want to jump on me for saying something like that, that's cool. You're an experienced grower and you know what you're talking about. Put your suggestions down here below so that other people can learn what you're doing, and hit like on the video and share that thing so that other people can see your comment and learn from it. If you're not going to make a video yourself, which, you know, it's a free country and I hope you do. So anyways, what I was going to say is that I've cultivated a lot of these plants for, I think, ever since legalization in Arizona. I think that's been about 6 years. Maybe it's been 5, maybe it's been 4. And you know, they fit my needs, like I've said, but I've grown them various ways. Now, one of the things that you'll see on my channel is grow dots. I don't use grow dots anymore for autoflowers, just basically because the grow dot time release capsule is releasing for 60 days for veg, and then it switched to flower. And most autoflowers, they tend to flower out around 28 to 35 days. And if they're longer than 35 days, it's rare. They usually do go into flower pretty soon. Now, here's a few things that I've observed, and I don't know if you've observed them, but if you have, again, comment below. Let's let everybody know what you've seen when you've grown these things. Now, one of the things that I've observed is that the pot size that I'm using, it really matters. Now, I'm not talking about width, I'm talking about depth. Now, as that taproot goes down, when it hits the bottom, I've noticed that the plant, you know, you can tell, by the way, how big the plant is based on the taproot by looking at the plant and then looking at your pot. You'll kind of get an idea that the taproot is going to be maybe a third longer in some situations than the actual plant is tall. So if your plant is already taller than your pot and your autoflower is starting to flower, that could be the reason why. Now, I'm not saying that it is the reason why. I'm saying that what I've observed is the deeper the pot, the longer of edge period I get, and the bigger, more well-developed of a plant I get. And also, I like to give them a large battery of food. I've narrowed growing autos down to a couple of ways, but as far as medium is concerned, I've narrowed it down to one. Now I've used everything from Happy Frog to Build a Soil. I've used Mother Earth. I've used all kinds of different things, but the number one best result that I get growing autoflowers is to use Canna Coco, and to use just a third the amount of worm castings as I use cocoa. And with that worm castings, I usually use the Build a Soil worm castings. They are very, very good. Or they have the Colorado worm casting company ones sometimes, and those are also really good. So anyways, I like the Build a Soil products, by the way, because they are so well sourced, well thought out, and they provide vigorous growth, and they are really generally a good company to deal with. So I highly recommend them, even though I'm not sponsored by them. So if I'm going to continue on, I would use the recommended amount of craft blend for my container when I'm setting up my container. Now, that gives me just enough, organic material in the cocoa that the roots really are encouraged and they really grow well. Now, you can do one or two things here at this point. A lot of times, most of the time, I plant my autoflower right in the pot, no matter how big it is. I found that if it is cocoa, I'm not going to overwater. And this is very essential with autoflowers. You really don't want to overwater them. That's another thing that you would like to avoid every time that you use an autoflower. If you're growing an autoflower and you want to water it, a lot of times what will happen is the plant will get stunted. You'll get a little one like this. Three Bears OG, I'm looking at you. Anyways, so basically you're going to want to water in that cocoa and have it adequately wet before you put your seed in. Don't water it anymore. Let the plant grow. As the plant sprouts and it grows, it will go down in that cocoa, which holds the water real well, and it will, because of the worm castings, hold them better, and then the plant will grow and it will flourish inside there. But you want to not water it. And a lot of times with autos, I don't water them for maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks after they sprout. I remember how heavy the container is. If you don't want to remember how heavy it is, just get a bathroom scale, set your container down on there, look at how heavy it is when it's watered, and then when you want to check, set it back down on that bathroom scale and you'll know the difference. That's a pro tip. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that bathroom scales are pretty accessible and really cheap, and a whole pot fits right on top of them. And they can support hundreds of pounds. Believe me, I know. So anyways, that is one of the best ways that I have seen. And then, I already know it's an autoflower. So on the 3rd week, if I'm growing organically, I'm gonna begin to top dress with my build a flower, or I'm gonna top dress with craft blend. And that, just depends on what I have on hand. But the second time I top dress, I will always be using the Build a Flower. I'll just order it if I need it, Anyways, that's the organic method that I use. And then the other method is simply to use Canna Coco. Once again, make sure your water is pH'd when you're doing this. Make sure your nutrients are about half strength. Start out small and build into it. Watch the plant, make sure, but either use bottled nutrients. You know, you can use any kind you want, and I'm not going to name any specific brands. You can use any kind of bottled nutrients as long as that water is pH around 6.2, and then make sure that you're following the recommended feeding regimen at a lower dose as you go. Or you can use salts, something like Floraflex, which I've had fantastic results with. Now, another thing, if you are using an auto watering system, I use auto pots. I used to not like them, but over time I've come to appreciate their flexibility, and they are really nice actual pots to grow in. So even when I don't have my plants hooked to the reservoir, a lot of times I'm using an auto pot. And that's because I live in Arizona, and I found that the fabric pots dry out around the edge too fast in my climate. So anyways, if you are using something like an auto pot, I would not recommend, like I said, don't water or overwater that auto early on. So I would not recommend until you start to see the pistils of the flowers to turn on that reservoir. But at that point, turn on that reservoir. Now, it's all up to you. If you've had great luck doing it other ways, please, again, put that down in the comments. Now, like I've told you in the beginning, there are all kinds of autoflowers. I'm just going to end this with telling you a few of my favorites. One of my favorites is Forgotten Strawberries. I have one going right now, and she's coming along nicely. And I've been growing that particular one for maybe 3 years now, off and on, and I've had, I think, 7 runs with it. So it's been a good, a good solid genetic. And then another one that I would recommend is Kim de la Creme, and that is, both of those are from Mephisto Genetics. And then finally, I would recommend the Planet of the Grapes Autoflower by Ethos Genetics. Let me know what your favorites are. It's good to see you, and we'll see you again next time.